Welcome, everyone. So glad you could all join me for another evening of tradition during October. Since the rollout of the public relations protocols last December and my own generous assistance efforts for the Foundation's research, I've been granted permission to keep this particular series of autumn specials going. One of the doctors has been kind enough to supply me with a singular curiosity still in the act of being assigned its number, an old volume from 1856 titled Report of the Commissioner of Patents, focusing on the Department of Agriculture, but not entirely keeping in the realm of its subject. Hidden among these pages, inserted between reports on crops, animals, and insects, are descriptions of several items in Foundation care. Apparently, this volume's anomalous properties work rather sporadically. There is no telling which items under Foundation care end up in the pages or when the change will occur, though a pattern has been observed that all inclusions take the form of items related to the current interests of whoever holds the book. It's a secret catalog, you might say, catering to the needs of readers by providing forbidden reports. The changing spots have been marked and, at present moment, number 13. I've been able to correlate the descriptions with items in Foundation care, and surprisingly, have been given clearance to share all of them. It's as if the book itself knew I couldn't be shown anything we couldn't read together. The researchers have already taken note of this further anomalous trait. The report of the Commissioner of Patents has granted us material in the vein of Gothic and weird literature we're studying this autumn. Tales that take an antiquarian route and provide glimpses of the grim happenings of previous times. Consider the secret catalog of the 1856 Patents Report an extremely rare pulp magazine, even down to the occasional appearance of amateur sketches related to the material. We'll begin our journey by examining a subject within that curiously reflects the volume itself. SCP-140, Keter Class. SCP-140 is a hardcover book with black binding and a continuously growing number of white pages titled A Chronicle of the Devas, printed in the early 1900s. The inside cover is signed by the author, whose signature cannot be read. All readers describe SCP-140 as fascinating and wish to continue reading past whatever point they stop, even though its content is highly unsettling. Readers admit to feelings of paranoia, unease, and occasional nausea while studying the volume, and 1 in 15 readers claim it has a faint odor of dried blood. According to the Foundation report, SCP-140 is a detailed account of an ancient civilization originating in what is now south-central Siberia, identified as the Davites. Although, like all cultures, the Davites evolved and changed over time, they appear to have exhibited unusual continuity. Universal fixtures of the Davite culture in all periods included militarism, conquest, ancestor worship, urban centers ruling over large slave populations, gruesome human sacrifice, and the practice of apparently efficacious thaumaturgic rituals. A variety of relics and creatures produced by the Davite culture would be abnormal or dangerous enough, if the account is to be believed, to qualify for containment in their own right. If SCP-140 comes into contact with any fluid suitable for writing, including human blood, the account of the Davite civilization's history expands. Human blood appears the most potent of possible writing substances, but in any case, the amount of new material does not correspond proportionately to the fluids introduced. Although these new segments sometimes include new descriptions of rituals or cultural traits or illustrations of previously covered material, they more frequently include new, more recent accounts of information chronicling the continued history of the Davite civilization or descriptions of new individuals and artifacts. Formerly decisive defeats become setbacks. New persons and events are inserted. Foundation archaeologists have discovered corresponding new artifacts and traces of the Davite civilization in applicable locations and strata, in some cases found in dig sites that had already been thoroughly explored. Although at times the Davites were a collection of city-states, they appear to have consistently returned to imperialism under a theocratic aristocracy, the Deva, practitioners of cannibalism and thaumaturgy. The book was originally discovered in the office of a deceased historian along with the body of the man himself. Though his wrists were cut, his death was accidental. He had bled himself dry feeding the book, evidenced by a single note he was able to make before expiring. "I have to know. I'm sorry." Within 15 meters of SCP-140, all books related to the history of the territory in which it was found had become blank. Many of the copies produced with the original batch in the early 1900s have shared the same fate. It seemed the text of other books had been drawn to feed the growing volume. The number of copies was already limited, having been self-published in a group of just over 40 by a wealthy hobbyist whose signature matches the one found inside the cover. This individual, the presumed author, is known as SCP-140-A. There are two addendums of further note for this record, 140-D and 140-E. A researcher's journal indicates that upon his initial reading of SCP-140, it ended with the almost utter destruction of the Davite civilization and the genocide of all known Deva by the forces of Chinese General Qin Kai. As a result of subsequent containment breaches, including those detailed in the journal, copious quantities of new material have been added, describing survivors regrouping and migrating to another region of central Siberia, rebuilding their empire steadily, and continuing to advance culturally and technologically. At present, the empire is described as having finally been crushed by Genghis Khan during the early period of his conquests, although the fates of many important persons and several cities remain ambiguous. Foundation archaeologists will be dispatched for investigation and research. After the incident at a dig site resulting in numerous casualties, all Foundation archaeologists excavating sites of suspected Davite artifacts or ruins are to be accompanied by a fully armed security team. SCP-140-1 has been neutralized. SCP-140-2 remains at large. All other anomalous contacts and artifacts were destroyed when the dig site was struck by a cruise missile. An investigation into the possible involvement of SCP-140-A or their agents in the aftermath of events is ongoing. It's a never-ending story, as long as you keep feeding the beast. Given enough sacrifices as payment to continue the tale, one could see the rise and fall of the Devas reach an eventual form of stability within more recent eras, and devastate the story of the world as we know it, all the way up to modern times. Best to leave this history lesson unread. Our next item concerning books is much less horrifying, depending on how you feel about libraries. SCP-3267 is one such location, found in the UK and constructed during the late 1800s. 10,267 books are currently found within, each with a handwritten name on the cover. Each name can be traced to records of deceased people from a collective location, redacted in the report. While inside 3267, one can experience any of the following anomalies. At movement speeds above 16 kilometers an hour, a soft, invisible barrier manifests in front of the subject and then disappears. If human speech exceeds 30 decibels, they are rendered unable to speak for 30 seconds. Any book taken from its shelf and placed in the wrong spot will bind itself to the reader's hand. This effect only ceases when the book is returned to the correct position it was found. Profanity results in a bar of soap manifesting in the speaker's mouth. It can be removed and disappears after 30 seconds. Damage done purposely to any book will immediately be reversed, and the person attempting damage will feel a sharp pain in the back of their hands, as if struck. This feeling fades after roughly 4 minutes. All books within the library are referred to as SCP-3267-1. 3267-2 is an entity capable of assembling books into a humanoid figure resembling a female in a dress. 3267-2 increases in size and details proportional with the number of books composing it. This entity is believed to possess the consciousness of Elizabeth Cooper, the original owner and librarian of SCP-3267. It is capable of movement and communicates by manifesting text on the book that acts as its face. 3267-2 is fluent in English, using an old dialect from the Victorian era. It has only been observed at night, adding new 3267-1 instances to the shelving. Investigations of the library using D-Class personnel revealed further anomalies. A spatial rift allowing access to an office, where an entity named David demanded to know where his son Stephen was and acknowledged the presence of Elizabeth. Albert Cooper, previous owner of the building before the Foundation took over, confirmed the identities of David and Stephen, as well as Elizabeth, his late aunt. Haunted libraries are special occurrences, aren't they? The SCP has the building open for public access in accordance with the final effect it produces, the severe desire to welcome others inside. Just do mind your manners if you visit, and watch your tongue. Our third item is beautiful in appearance, and may be so even in tone, but you would do better without its presence in your home. SCP-224, the Grandfather Clock, is exactly as it seems. A wooden grandfather clock, accented with a black lacquer and gold leaf. Markings remotely observed date its origin at the end of the 19th century, though internal examination of its components has been done. The density and construction of its gears make method of function impossible to interpret. The hands of the clock do not move with any known consistency, though the tendency seems to be generally clockwise. Additionally, chimes occur at non-regular intervals, ranging from approximately 1 minute to several months. To further complicate matters, the numbers on the clock also have a tendency to move and shift, though they generally retain ascending order. Each chime has an anomalous acoustic signature that causes a drastic localized temporal acceleration. People and objects in range of the sound begin to age. The amount of time is not consistent with the chimes, ranging from essentially inconsequential amounts to several years, though the amount aged during any single event is consistent for all objects within the field of effect. SCP-224 was originally found in an antique shop and purchased by a visitor as a gift for his wife. When brought home and wound up, the anomalous properties were noticed, though not acted upon, both apparently considering the object broken. Their bodies were discovered in the collapsed house 2 days later, aged significantly. Foundation personnel took interest, and SCP-224 was subsequently recovered. 2 agents were unfortunately lost following exposure during transportation. There is one catalog incident related to this item. Today, I have the pleasure of informing Agent Redacted that he is to be given retirement pay and is free to leave active duty as of this evening. It was not initially approved by the director until I explained the circumstances. Agent Redacted, who is the father of Alice and husband of Mary Lee, was walking past the SCP-224 containment facility on Friday, March 17th. He was reporting to Supervisor's office to deliver the final report on another SCP, which he was instrumental in helping acquire. Because SCP-224's effect is so unpredictable, he had no way of knowing that the object had activated until the acoustic dampening equipment failed, leading to the collapse of the wall. At this time, the agent was exposed to 7 iterations of SCP-224's effects. The first one saw him age into his mid-30s. Those of you who have seen the video are aware that this was not a drastic change. However, by the second exposure, he was now well into his 40s. There was significant graying of hair. By the third iteration, he was balding, and we estimate his age reached into the early 60s. By the fourth, his skin had noticeably wrinkled, with liver spots appearing in several places. By the sixth iteration, the agent collapsed due to a broken hip, fracturing several ribs and his left arm. It was at this time that he lost control of his bowels and bladder. When the 7th iteration ended, containment had to be manually re-established. At this time, the agent is estimated to be over 100 years old. As a note, the agent volunteered for termination and examination of SCP-224's effects, should the retirement pay he was now technically entitled to be rewarded to his family. I heartily thank the director and the agent for giving us this opportunity to study SCP-224's effects. I hope you'll remember in the future that, while some SCPs kill immediately, others do not. Others leave lingering effects that have ramifications for the people and the families of the people who are subjected to them. And with that grim note, I'd say it's time to move on. Our next item is another object, just as tall, dark, and wooden as the previous. A coffin. SCP-895 is an ornate oak coffin recovered from a mortuary by SCP personnel on following reports of unusual footage captured by surveillance equipment. When questioned, mortuary staff were unable to determine the source of SCP-895 and how it was transported to the location. Upon attempting to open SCP-895, agents on location found the object empty. However, observers viewing the live camera feed suffered an effect that has been expunged from the record. Until further notice, SCP-895 must remain closed at all times. SCP-895 causes disruptions in video and photographic surveillance equipment within 50 meters, similar to vivid, disturbing hallucinations with variable direction and regularity corresponding to the camera's proximity. Within a range of 5 meters from SCP-895, footage captured can cause severe psychological trauma and hysteria in most subjects. These disruptions do not extend to observers physically present within the area. Addendum 895-01 is an audio recording of an incident attached to the record. The recovery team for 895 follows instructions from Command, who first reports blood on the walls, followed by the disappearance of the coffin. It then reappears and is said to be moving, though the team on the ground report no such thing. Command's final bit of audio is reported as sounds of screaming and retching. Another addendum notes that the incident resulted in the loss of 3 personnel members. Usually, surveillance equipment is meant to capture events in life, but how do you deal with something that only exists in video form? Chalk this item up to a web series that we're all better off never seeing come to pass. Next up, we take a journey to visit a peculiar object that will move whether or not the camera's watching. SCP-1851 is not particularly violent, but is absolutely capable of being dangerous. This 5-foot doll with brown hair and blue eyes is the caretaker and sentry of a home situated in a redacted location. She performs all manner of house and lawn work, tending the interior and the grounds, which includes special treatment regarding living creatures. Mammals and birds that come across the property will be taken inside the home, at which point its body will transform, changing to resemble a toy. The initial stage of the conversion is the shrinking of the subject, ending when the subject shrinks to 1/10 of its size. The subject's internal mass becomes either a hollow cavity or cotton, based on analysis of discarded SCP-1851-1. The subject's skin is converted into porcelain or plastic if made hollow, or cloth if filled with cotton. After evaluating SCP-1851-1, SCP-1851 will either store the object in a toy box in the nursery or discard it. Attempts to retrieve instances of SCP-1851-1 that have not been discarded have resulted in the destruction of 2 rovers and 3 drones. Retrieval of discarded instances have yielded no reaction from SCP-1851. After the process is completed, 1851 returns to its typical behavior. If 1851 does not have any interactions with a new instance of 1851-1 for approximately 7 days, it will actively seek organisms for the conversion process. A record is attached to the report detailing an interview with 1851 by researcher Julia. It is revealed the doll can in fact speak, and claims that she's keeping the house clean for the return of her family. The singing that researchers heard coming from the estate, which prompted the interview, is due to the doll's happiness at the approaching special day, the young mistress's birthday. It turns out that all the dolls made of living creatures that had crossed the lawn were meant to be gifts for the family's daughter. Researcher Julia asked if the doll considered it possible that the family may not return. She replied, "Of course not. When I was assigned to this family, it was with the express promise that it was a temporary position. My family will return soon enough. Until then, I will continue in my duties." Julia asked what those duties include, but was immediately told to leave. As the doll left to continue her work, Julia spotted an inscription written on her back. "To my beloved daughter, I know I can't be there for you, and I am sorry. I wish I could. I hope this will help." To date, human examples of 1851's doll collection have not been found, but it is assumed by researchers after seeing far too much in their years at the Foundation that careless assumption could result in the grim honor of setting a precedent. Our next home contains an occupant that could easily empathize with 1851, though for very different reasons. Located in the farmland-dotted woods of New Jersey lies SCP-3606, a 2-story house resembling a cabin. Visitors to this location will immediately find upon approach that most of the plants and trees have died or are in the process of withering away. The first anomalous effect of 3606 is the continuous rotting, decaying, and deterioration of all organic life. This effect can begin working on any living creature to cross the property in as little time as 7 minutes. The rate of deterioration will bring death within about 12 hours. Only one being is immune to this effect, SCP-3603-A, a man named August Mays, who has lived in the home his entire life, many years of which have been frozen in time, as Mr. Mays stopped aging from the onset of anomalous activity. This comes with a severe price. When SCP-3606-A moves more than 3 meters from the home, he will fall into a catatonic stupor that only reverses upon reintroduction to SCP-3606. As these episodes cause 3606-A extreme pain and distress, he is permitted to reside in 3606. Mr. Mays experiences regular dreams featuring an individual referred to by a name redacted from the report, whose appearance resembles 3606-B. He also reports waking hallucinations consistent with these dreams. 3606-A is obsessed with 3606-B, spending the majority of his spare time producing artistic works that depict him in some manner. 3606-A exhibits a variety of intense emotional responses towards 3606-B, most commonly those of love and reverence, though he often has difficulty expressing these emotions or his thoughts on 3606-B. The home, SCP-3606, was built in 1928 and displayed no anomalous properties until June 18, 1951. Several days earlier, 3606-A's mother and younger sister, both residents of the house, were hospitalized. This ultimately proved lethal in both cases. Additionally, several minor earthquakes were detected near 3606. 3606-A, Mr. Mays, was 23 years old at the time. 3606's development of primary anomalous properties coincided with those of 3606-A, as well as the beginning of August's dreams of 3606-B. The Foundation became involved within 36 hours after reports of massive crop and livestock deaths. 18 human casualties were recorded before containment was established. 3606B is a human male of indeterminate age located 8 meters below SCP-3606's foundation, at the bottom of an apparently natural stone pit. Records from the house's construction make no mention of such a pit, and SCP-3606A is unaware of 3606B's presence. 3606B resides in a stone coffin-shaped depression in the bedrock. Imaging indicates the existence of an additional, liquid-filled cavity of indeterminate size beneath this coffin, though this has not been manually confirmed. While SCP-3606B is alive, it has shown no need for sustenance and possesses no higher brain activity. It is fused to the interior of its coffin at several points, with essential organ systems extending at least 3 meters into the surrounding rock. Extracting 3606B from its present location is not considered feasible. Furthermore, excavation of the area underneath or around 3606B's coffin carries a significant risk of injuring or killing 3606B. The next body on our list is, naturally, just as horribly alive as our previous entry, but under even more unusual means. SCP-4586 is a mobile human skeleton wearing a 19th century era suit, matching black shoes, black gloves, a top hat, and a decorative wooden cane. Despite the lack of necessary organs, subject possesses viral and auditory capabilities similar to that of a normal person. While it is still unknown how the specimen is able to hear, tests have confirmed that SCP-4586 is capable of seeing through its only eye, located on the left socket of its skull. Subject cannot see through its right eye, and its respective socket and nose have been covered with a black material believed to be a polymer of unknown composition. Additionally, while it lacks both muscular tissues and an apparent nervous system, 4586 can walk and run at average speeds. SCP-4586 claims to be Dr. Robert Mirth Wallen, born in 1830 in New York. The entity is capable of providing a detailed biography of Dr. Mirth Wallen's life. However, should it be questioned about certain events or details, 4586 appears to purposely provide vague answers, and should it be pressed to reveal more, it either attempts to switch the topic at hand or it refuses to answer. Records from the Mirth Wallen family reveal that Robert was a reclusive individual who dedicated much of his life and his family's wealth to his scientific pursuits. In April of 1867, Dr. Mirth Wallen was reported missing, before presumed dead in June of that year. Extensive interviews with the apparent Dr. Mirth Wallen revealed slowly the reasons for his transformation and the work that he was involved with. Previously an occult scientist working for a group called The Factory, Mirth Wallen fled the organization after realizing its ultimate aims of evil. He then pursued a form of immortality to spend however many years it would take to bring down his former employer, who utilizes torture and blood magic to create their products. Named the Gentleman's Skeleton by the researchers, Mirth Wallen is actually quite helpful to the Foundation's work, particularly in their pursuit to stop the work done by the Factory. He is, however, quite the unsettling sight to behold. Speaking of anomalous items and blood, let's turn to our next entry, SCP-3041. The Red Knife. On February 15, 1987, historical collector and recluse Daniel Crenshaw ended his life, leaving behind a vast assortment of antiques. Also left behind was this note explaining the reason for his demise. The nightmare began a year ago, and it still won't stop. In it, my arm is wet with blood, the knife in hand, glittering like a brilliant shining ruby. My heart beats like a drum. Before me, I see the faces of strangers, contorted in agony, screaming for mercy. A woman, a man, children, 3 girls and a little baby boy. I do not know them. I cut them open. I cut them open, and then I eat their hearts. I know it's just a nightmare, but it feels so real, so vivid, and there are times when I swear I can taste raw meat on the back of my tongue, when I can feel it slide down my throat, into my belly. I've lived a long, lonely life. I have never known friends or family, so why do I live in a house with so many rooms? Why does each room fill me with guilt and dread? Why can't I bring myself to go down to my basement? Why does it smell like rotting flesh? And why do I own a crib? My nightmare took place under the house. I've never gone down to look. I'm too afraid. If you're reading this, then you'll have to look for me. Maybe you'll find nothing. I pray you find nothing. Either I'm crazy or I'm the devil. Please God, let me be crazy. A thorough investigation of Crenshaw's basement revealed nothing. No crib, no remains, but there was an overpowering odor of rancid meat. It was only after experiencing similar dreams that the researcher going through the antique collection realized one of the items was anomalous. An iron knife with a hilt wrapped in braided leather, the blade seemingly rusted over and the entire weapon smelling of spoiled meat. This knife, SCP-3041, will only work on those who have held it. Once activated, subjects will eventually experience a dream wherein they use 3041 to attack one or more persons, removing and consuming their hearts. This dream is set wherever the subject initially held 3041, and typically involves victims one would expect to find in this setting. In all cases, subjects do not recognize their victims. No victim is known to correlate with an actual person, alive or dead. Subjects will often continue to have recurrences of this dream with little variation, though amnestics reduce or even eliminate these occurrences. Most subjects continue to show signs of emotional distress, guilt, and psychological trauma associated with PTSD. SCP-3041's effect can be triggered multiple times, producing new dreams in each case. Testing rounds by a researcher revealed further anomalous properties. The knife led the Foundation operative to submit several requests from more than one D-Class personnel member to occupy the room with the knife holder, but they have no memory of having done this. Requests began in earnest after the D-Class used for the knife experiment reported nightmares about attacking and devouring the hearts of 2 other D-Class members. No members of D-Class or the research team were harmed, but there was a stench of rotting meat that plagued the testing room in the wake of the experiments. Our next stop takes us outside the realm of nightmares and into a very real case of horror. SCP-1461 is reported as an English manor from the year 1890 with 2 levels, which contain 12 bedrooms, 4 baths, 3 studies, a ballroom, library, kitchen, and pantry. There is nothing abnormal to be found here. The basement, however, is a different story. Several sublevels exist below the manor, constructed with no discernible sense of logic. Stairs lead into nothing, doors open to bare walls, pipes and odd forms of machinery are found throughout, fueled by corrosive black substance unknown to the Foundation. Anomalous artifacts have also been discovered among the mazes of pipes, gears, pistons, and monsters. 57 humanoid entities exist inside the facility, augmented with crude mechanical implants. Each instance of 1461-1 has been uniquely augmented, with little uniformity between them. The majority have been augmented with metallic teeth and claw-like protrusions on their hands, giving them lethal close-quarters compatibility. Other augmentations include iron bolts haphazardly grafted to the subject's bones, severe reinforcement to the spinal column, and the replacement of one or more organs with prosthetic equivalents. SCP-1461-1 appears to possess no higher brain functions or retain any sense of self, acting entirely on canine levels of instinct and intelligence. Instances stick to 1 or 2 unit groups, build easily hidden or defensible nests, and attempt to collect food cannibalized from one another or from intruding Foundation staff. All instances of SCP-1461-1 are considered extremely hostile. It is theorized that SCP-1461 itself may command 1461-1. The speaking tube system throughout the facility has been observed emitting loud metallic shrieks that cause SCP-1461-1 to retreat from an area. In other encounters, metallic odor identified to be blood filters through the ventilation system, drawing SCP-1461-1 to the marked location. The frequency and accuracy at which SCP-1461 scent marks areas currently occupied by Foundation personnel suggests some kind of guiding, hostile intelligence. At least 4 instances of SCP-1461-1 have received additional augmentation, replacing their esophagus and lungs with a phonograph device powered by 1461-1's own motions. These phonographs emit a constant, repeating stream of speech peppered with religious symbolism, but has provided no clues as to its creator or purpose. Records indicate that the manor was owned by a World War I veteran dismissed from combat after an injury during battle. After recovery, he built SCP-1461 with a sense of bitterness towards humanity and sought a form of escape from the world. It was believed he had anywhere from 50 to 100 employees assisting who later formed a cult inside the manor. In November of 1941, the building vanished and later reappeared, with the monstrous sublevels now in existence. A phonograph recording was taken from the facility during initial Foundation research trips. This is one example of what could be heard through the speaker system of SCP-1461. I am what you have made me. I am choice and I am tyranny. Forgive me. I am then and I am now. What gods they will be then. I am evil and I am flesh. I am the trap. I am the trapped. I am beauty and I am chaos. Children are selfish. I am the worm. I have broken God. Before we exit the neighborhood of horrors presented to us by this volume, we must make one more stop. The final home on this street, SCP-717, is no longer intact. Here there once stood an elegant Victorian, but now there are only sad ruins. Among the remains, you can find a guest bedroom on the second story, occupied by a white cloth mannequin sitting in front of a table. This mannequin is known as SCP-717-1, and at all times, a lamp, a set of writing implements, large block letters, and a modified Ouija board must be kept on the table in front of it. No other items are to be placed on this table. If SCP-717-1 shows signs of movement, one staff member is to sit at the table and remain in the room with it. The staff member present must turn on the lamp and point at the word "wait" on the modified Ouija board, then immediately shut the lamp off. Staff is advised to remain quiet and breathe steadily until relieved. 717-2 is sealed behind a titanium alloy vault door. It is mounted on the wall behind SCP-717-1. The vault is to remain sealed per mutual agreement. If any whistling is heard from the vault, maintenance must be performed immediately to prevent a breach. If the 717-2 vault is breached from the far side, it is to be considered a hostile act. Communication with 717 is to immediately cease, and staff are to equip weapons to repel invaders. This unnerving setup is explained by an incident log attached to the report, with testimony of a 17-year-old survivor of a visit to this house. We came to this house because we heard all the old rumors about it, about the old cult that used to worship in its basement, and we wanted to see if we could use our Ouija board to contact the spirits here. At first, all we found was construction stuff and the whole place smelled of paint. We looked around in the basement and a lot of the furniture had been moved down there and covered with sheets, and I remember seeing it there now that I think about it. The dummy. It was hanging on a hook, leaning against a wardrobe. We all laughed at it, thought it was a ghost at first. Then we went upstairs and lit some candles and got out the board. Right away, it got really, really cold. We started asking questions and every answer we got was, "Get out." The survivor continues, saying another member of the seance grabbed the pointer and was directed to the word "stop" over and over. She said her hands were numb and she couldn't move them on her own. The candles were flickering, but there were shadows on the board that weren't moving. Then there was this loud banging in the basement and I got up to run, but I tripped. I think that's when the candles got knocked over, all the fresh paint and fumes. There was something dark staining the wallpaper and it started peeling away all over the room. I think there was writing under the paper. Some of it was already there. This wind came from nowhere, like everything was being sucked towards the dark spot on the wall, but it just made the flames get bigger. The flames were between me and the others. That's why The survivor paused. When their ability to speak returned, they reported that it came through the wall and one of her friends just broke. Like a statue, like she was frozen. It was like waves of black curtains blowing out of the wall and there was this wailing. There were hands and faces and other things grabbing at the others, smothering them, but they couldn't get through the flames to me. I ran downstairs and the basement door was slamming open and shut. I had to pass it to get to the front door and that thing, the dummy, it skittered up the stairs like a bug and its hands were covered with blood. It was climbing the walls and it tore at all the wallpaper, smearing that blood all over. It wouldn't let me leave. It never touched me, but it would get in my way, make me look at it. It wrote "stop, stop, stop" all over the walls and doors. The fire was coming closer, so I shoved at it. It started burning and then it was bleeding. Blood was gushing from its stomach and face while it tried to crawl out of the fire. Some of its blood got on me as I ran out the door. I could see the fire trucks coming, but when they came, the firemen ran right past me. They didn't see me where I fell in the bushes and they never came back out. I didn't feel it at the time, but that thing's blood, it made my legs numb. They're broken too, aren't they? They broke apart, like hers did. Please tell me. The doctors won't let me look. The report indicates that the survivor was given Class A amnestics and the remains of her legs had to be amputated. Tissue damage was consistent with the frozen remains recovered from the ashes. The mannequin showed no unusual properties after being removed from the site of SCP-717. The stains on its hands were from black paint found in the basement, not blood. No unexpected substance was found in its material. Contact was established with the SCP-717 entity/entities after a second mannequin animated in the basement. Containment procedures were agreed upon, and 717 was dormant for the next 30 years until it became active to negotiate the cessation of certain activities. Under no circumstances are any containment staff to enter into negotiations with SCP-717. From the streets now we depart and head far across the rippling horizon of the sea to another abandoned relic, the HMS Tiresias, a ship that should have stopped sailing ages ago. Labeled SCP-1260, the Tiresias is an 18th century 42 gun of the Royal Navy adrift in the South Pacific Ocean. Aboard SCP-1260 reside the skeletal remains of the ship's original 224 crewmen, in addition to a total of 64 other individuals and the 9 Foundation agents lost during Exploration 1. A majority of these remains lie fully intact upon the ship's gun decks or within SCP-1260's hull. All clothing and equipment recovered from 1260 continue to function as normal despite age and environmental exposure. 20 minutes following any boarding of 1260, a large bank of fog will begin to gather around the ship with a radius of 1 kilometer. This fog fully encloses the ship an additional 15 minutes later, at which point all electronic devices aboard issuing a transmission will cease to function. Any subject still aboard SCP-1260 at this time will become irretrievable. The fog will dissipate 10 minutes after SCP-1260 is fully enveloped. At this point, the subject will have vanished along with anything aboard the ship at the time of encasement. 1260 will reappear in a random site in the next major ocean 2 to 12 weeks later, moving from east to west as it circles the globe. At this time, all human life aboard the ship at the time of its disappearance will be among the skeletal remains. The extent of these anomalous effects were discovered during a Foundation attempt to explore the Tiresias. While the research team did suffer its effects, Team Leader Bell was able to leave a diary of the experience that followed the closing in of the fog, recovered by Research Team 2. It was written on the back of the captain's log, the target of recovery for Team 1. I'm writing this in the event that we aren't able to provide a debriefing in person. We found the damn thing stuffed in a pond in the cruise mess. We remained encased in fog God knows how long before it dissipated. We were then spit out in a different place, though I can't say where. The sea is black as ink. Our lights don't penetrate the surface, so we have no idea what lurks below. The sky is also pitch black, no stars or moon. The only light source available aside our flashlights is a bright glow coming from the top of the main mast. Hammond climbed up there to take a look, but there was nothing there. For the time being, we are going to explore the ship. Maybe we'll find something that'll give us an idea of what to do next. We heard whispers today. They were very soothing at first, but now they seem off. None of us can make out where they are coming from, but what they say to us is crystal clear. They called to James by name. They asked him about his family. He attempted to respond, but they never replied. We can see another light in the distance. The voices are coming from that direction. There is a breeze here, so maybe we'll try to sail. Hammond and Gray are now dead. Both had their names called and both withered away. There's not a thing we can do. They just fell apart in front of me. Now the whispers have started laughing. The light in the distance is getting closer. Beyond that, 4 other lights have appeared. I'm hoping we arrive before those things begin to call me. We arrived at the light today. It was another ship, some merchant frigate from the 20th century or something like that. We managed to board it. Skeletons. Just like with the Tiresias, they were only skeletons. It was then the whispers became cackles, and we saw at least another 10 lights begin to burn in the distance. They seem to come from every damn direction now. Even worse, whispers have started calling my name. The rest of the team is staying away from me. I don't want to die. They ask me about my daughter and my wife. They ask me if I miss them and if I'm strong enough to see them again. I have tried to respond, but they don't reply. I don't know what they want from me. I screamed at the sky for hours. They never responded. I have personally flipped through the captain's log, but there is absolutely nothing here to indicate the captain or the crew had anything to do with this. The final log puts the crew on a mission to investigate pirate attacks in the East Indian Ocean with good conditions. I've placed myself against the main mast with the log in my hands. I hope the Foundation learns something. I hope our deaths expanded that scientific horizon. From the roiling waters of the sea, we travel north all the way to a place where the ocean calms and becomes still, where, hopefully, anything can become still. Our new location is Antarctica, home to SCP-2764, a massive biological entity of unknown origin. Its height measures to be approximately 382 meters, and is estimated to weigh over 150,000 metric tons. The entity possesses between 75 to 85 tentacular appendages extending from the ventral region of its body. The organism appears to move as if it were a quadrupedal animal. That is, the ventral cavity of its body faces the ground and the dorsal cavity faces the opposite direction. The organism also appears to have a cranial extrusion which is hypothesized to contain its brain, but there is no backing data for this, and the only organs visible on this head are its eyes, of which it possesses 4, 2 on each half of the facial region. SCP-2764 possesses the ability to telepathically communicate. The language in which it communicates is dependent on the listener. 2764, however, does not appear to understand any messages it may receive in response. 2764's size does not appear to follow Euclidean geometry. That is, one cannot distinguish the organism's true size based on simply looking at it, as the creature will often appear to be many times smaller or larger than estimates determine it to be. There is a critical zone which lies approximately 50 kilometers in diameter from SCP-2764. 2764's appendages appear to rapidly translocate themselves inexplicably. They will also transpose with each other's positions in space at very rapid intervals. Whether this has a relation to the previous anomaly mentioned is, as of yet, unknown. Lastly, and perhaps most noteworthy, 2764's position will flicker on occasion, though the frequency of this event is unknown, as it appears to occur on a completely unsystematic basis. The location of 2764 has never flickered further than 25 kilometers, and the object has always flickered back to its original location within 48 hours. Investigative logs were taken by Captain Mann of the Foundation's Mobile Task Force 805, spanning the course of 11 days. On day 1, he confirmed the reports of visuals pertaining to SCP-2764. It was on day 2 that anomalous effects began. Last night as I tried to sleep, I kept hearing a strange voice. While I cannot currently recall what it was saying, I am sure it has something to do with the beast out there. I personally see no other explanation, as I was alone and I have no history of hearing voices. Day 2, afternoon. I've gathered a few volunteers from the task force. Our job is to secure the anomaly until the main guards can get here, not research it, so I won't be forcing anyone to come along with me. But it's not against my orders to carry out some extra research, and I wouldn't mind having some other folks investigating with me. Always better to have more than one person when it comes to witnessing events. Day 2, evening. I am hearing this voice again. It is currently about 10 o'clock p.m. and I'm trying to comprehend what it is saying. It's like it's speaking English, and I know it is, but I just can't work out what it's saying. Day 3. One of the guys that volunteered came to my tent in the early hours of the morning and said he couldn't go through with it. I told him that it was fine and that I don't blame him. When I asked him why he changed his mind though, he told me that he had been hearing something talking to him last night and suspected that it was connected to the anomaly. When I heard about this, I asked him if he knew what it was saying. He said that he couldn't recall exactly what it was saying, but its words evoked a terrible fear in him that he never wished to experience again. When I inquired, he also stated that it was speaking English. But again, he can't recall what it's saying exactly. I then revealed that I too had been hearing voices, but had not been terrified by them. This did not convince him to stay on the exploration team with us, but it seemed to comfort him that he was not the only one hearing things. I hope the other two are still in for it. Day 4. We set up camp about a quarter way to the thing. The snow was deep and thick, and to be honest, I was surprised we made it even a quarter of the way. No signs of any voices heard by myself or the other two last night. I'm making sure to be very discreet when I ask them about any oddities. Don't want to put up a red flag. Day 4, afternoon. We covered about half the distance we did yesterday, so I would say we're close to halfway there. About 3/8 of the way, to be exact. The snow is getting deeper as we approach the thing. It continues to shrink as we approach it, so nothing too out of the ordinary thus far, with the exception of the out-of-place prints in the snow. None of us can work out what creature they originate from. Yesterday I thought they were human tracks. Day 5, midnight. I've been lying awake for some time now and I've realized that something was horribly out of the ordinary. I recall that as we approached the thing, it got smaller. Well, I would expect it to grow larger as we put more distance between it and ourselves. The problem is, It has not grown larger since this morning when we left to return to the tent. Day 6, afternoon. We made it back to the point we left from yesterday and decided to continue on for a little while longer. The creature has continued to shrink, even as we travel the same path we traveled the day before yesterday. The spatial anomaly is starting to get eerily disheartening. Day 6, evening. The creature has disappeared. We all agree that it was due southeast, but we've checked the compasses again and again, but the thing is just no longer there. I hypothesize that it has grown so small that we can no longer see it, but the other two guys think it just disappeared. Regardless, we all agree to continue in the direction we were headed. We will continue on for a day, and if it has not reappeared at that point, then I see no reason to continue. We'll just have to go back. Day 7. Once again, I've heard the voice. It is now distinguishable as a single voice as opposed to more than one as I had previously believed. Some of the words were actually comprehensible and memorable, but they were simple things which actually made no sense when put together. The most distinct words were snow and back. The latter is especially eerie, but I can't think anything of it as there was no context. When I inquired, the other two guys had also heard the voice and came to the same conclusions I had. Day 7, afternoon. It is 5 o'clock and two oddities have occurred. 1. We have all agreed that the past 2 hours were definitely a longer duration than 2 hours. On top of space, the creature must incur a temporal anomaly as well. Strangely enough, however, this is the first time any temporal anomaly has been noticed by myself or the other two. Second of all, and most disturbing, are the tracks in the snow. They reappeared last night, but I thought nothing of it, as it is a normality at this point. But the tracks are definitely no longer human at this point or anything of this earth. The closest thing I can think of is perhaps a squid which walks on land. Considering that the creature out there has tentacular appendages, I suppose this isn't too much of a surprise, but it is still certainly frightening. I am interested in following them, but I want to get to the creature above all else. The main guards were supposed to arrive this morning, but I see no signs of them thus far. Day 7, evening. New tracks have appeared around our tent. None of us heard anything out of the ordinary. Myself and one of the guys agree that those tracks were not there before, while the other guy recalls their existence before this occurrence. We will have to be more mindful of things like this. It's beginning to become more dangerous than it already was, and I suspect something sinister about these newfound tracks. Day 8, midnight. Our reliance on the temporal anomaly stability has failed us. It is currently midnight, but we only got a couple hours of sleep. I've made the decision to continue forth. My fear for my own safety, and more importantly, my fear for their safety, has grown to the point where I will have to take full control of the expedition. No more votes. I will take their opinions into consideration, but my word will be final from this point on. Day 8 to 9 transition, early morning, day 9. As we continued to walk, the voice made a very clear statement to all of us. This is not verbatim, as I could never hope to remember every incomprehensible word this horrible creature has spoken to us, and I apologize for my vagueness, but we got the intended message. Turn back. No doubt at this point, those words are those of the creature we hope to reach. The tone of the voice did not imply any sort of anger or even a hint of territorial jealousy. It sounded more fearful than anything else. Day 9 before noon. Something has been following us this entire time, since day 1. To be frank, I do not care about that thing out there any longer. Something has been following us, and this explains the strange tracks in the snow. This must be why those tracks led us back to our old tent. We were not following them forward, we were following them backward. Day 9, afternoon. I've come to the realization that I am now alone. Where I once heard the comforting sound of human footsteps crunching the snow behind me, I now hear nothing but the hollow wind and emptiness. I cannot recall at what point those two got away from me, or perhaps at what point I got away from them, but I am now terrified of what is to come. I still have plenty of supplies packed, and as previously stated, food and water will really be no issue for at least the next fortnight, but I am alone. The tracks in the snow are now more terrifying than ever, and the voice more horrific than before. Day 10. I am almost back to base, but I see some guys coming over the snow hill. I assume they are looking for me, so I need to warn them to not go any further inward. Day 10 morning. These folks are approaching me awfully slowly. They've taken to setting up a camp, which is strange, because if they are looking for me, which is undoubtedly the case, then they are taking an unnecessary break as I am no more than half a mile away. Day 10, before noon. They made some slow but steady progress toward my location, and then they decided to turn back. I suspect that the spatial anomaly is affecting our distance, because as I stated previously, we are only about half a mile apart. Why they are turning back, I haven't a clue. Day 11. I am currently very frightened. I want these guys to turn back. I know what has happened. I don't know how it happened, but it did. I will write more on my suspicions once I recover sufficient evidence for them. But for now, I say this for future reference. I do not know how this happened. Day 11, early morning. I recovered a journal in the snow. I know my suspicion to be true at this point. What I discovered in the journal was horrible. I refused to write any of its contents here. I scrawled a warning in it as quickly as I could. I know who will find it. Day 11, late morning. The travelers disappeared and then reappeared again. I tried to approach the lone wanderer in person to notify him to turn back, but this was to no avail, as he was hostile and proceeded to cut out a chunk of my back. I had no clue how to react to this. I just ran away. This realization is too horrible for me to state plainly. My suspicions have been all but confirmed. It all adds up. The tissue analyzer coming up as a 0, the transition of human tracks in the snow to those tentacular things. Something occurred. The time and space is all messed up due to this beast. I will leave this to the consideration of the reader, whoever finds this log. I hope it is not me this time. And now, at last, our final destination, Item 13. SCP-3547, no longer contained, with urgent reclassification required from its previous label as a Euclid. The report goes as follows. SCP-3547 is a potentially sapient interdimensional entity that has the ability to contact human subjects via their subconscious during delta wave non-REM sleep, so long as the subject has been made aware of the existence of it beforehand, and they wish to communicate with it of their own free will. Subjects who claim to have communicated with SCP-3547 during this dreamlike state describe it as a large, vaguely humanoid mass of strands of an unknown composition, suspended within a dark blue-green void. Subjects report feeling nauseous when looking at 3547, but felt compelled to continue looking nonetheless. Those who dream of 3547 describe its communication as thoughts and feelings that manifest in their minds spontaneously. After multiple encounters with 3547, subjects will speak about it with profuse positivity and religious fervor, claiming that bringing it into our universe would save all of humanity, although specifics of this remain vague. All subjects tested stated that they believed the entity wanted to come closer to them and embrace them, but it was apprehensive for unknown reasons. SCP-3547 is referenced in a collection of Anglo-Saxon manuscripts written around the 9th century, which were bound into a single tome at a later unknown date. The title of the collection roughly translates to Dreams of Our Beloved. The book is currently stored in the secure document storage facility at Site 11. The collection features several poems describing SCP-3547 as a savior of the authors of the text. One poem is an instruction on how to construct an item called the Lucid Crown. The poem goes on to explain that the coronet facilitates the communication with SCP-3547, and that the audience with our beloved can be shared if another sleeps awake with the wearer of the crown. It can be assumed that this is referring to the effects of the electromagnetic field produced by the Lucid Crown. It is unclear whether the authors of the text constructed the Lucid Crown themselves or recovered it from elsewhere. SCP-3547-A is an ornate but roughly constructed coronet matching the description of the Lucid Crown. It is made of copper, featuring 8 iridescent blue stones of unknown composition equally spaced around the perimeter. The stones protrude inwards through the coronet so that they make contact with the wearer's head. If a subject who is aware of 3547 sleeps while wearing 3547-A, their encounter becomes far more vivid and lucid. All test subjects reported that they believed SCP-3547 felt far more comfortable approaching them in this encounter, with some reporting that 3547 was apparently bold enough to reach toward them and lightly stroke their head. While the subject is asleep wearing SCP-3547-A, the stones surrounding it emit an anomalous electromagnetic field at a frequency outside the range measurable by standard equipment, which causes anyone in range to instantly enter Stage 3 non-REM sleep. Anyone affected by this field will share the dream of the wearer of SCP-3547-A. One passage of note from Dreams of Our Beloved describes a procedure that was explained to the author by SCP-3547 during a dream. The procedure appears to be a ceremony designed to allow 3547 to enter our universe permanently as a corporeal manifestation. To perform the ceremony, a volunteer must willfully wear 3547-A while sleeping outdoors and have it struck by lightning while communicating with 3547. The manner in which the entity manifests in our universe is not described. No mention of success or failure to perform the ceremony is recorded in the collection. 4 experiment logs are attached to the report, detailing research into the phenomenon using a D-Class personnel member. Immediately, there is success, with D-2374 waking up after 6 hours to state that they met the Night Emperor, a being that seems human in appearance, but composed of strands, like hair floating in water. During Experiment 2, a researcher fell unconscious while monitoring equipment, and it was reported by both the D-Class and the researcher that they saw each other, however briefly, in the same dream while waiting for the Night Emperor. As a result, Experiment 3 was conducted using 2 D-Class personnel, who exhibited remarkable changes of behavior after waking up. They held hands and said, "We saw each other and our beloved granted us an audience. He's delighted that your foundation is taking an interest in him, but he can only save us if we sleep. All of us. Tell everyone. Everyone must know his message. He can only perform his work if all of our minds look away." It was asked precisely what his work would be and how humanity would be saved. The reciting doctor was told, wait and rest. We must sleep. Only when we awaken will we behold our beloved's work." Experiment 4 marked the end of official research into this item. D-2374 was instructed to ask a number of questions during the dream. Instead, after being locked into the experiment cell, they took the lucid crown and stuck one of its points into an electrical socket. At that moment, all staff in the western half of Site 11 instantly fell asleep. Dr. Michael Cross, who sat just outside of the radius of the field in his laboratory, raised the alarm after several of his laboratory techs dropped unconscious to the floor at the same time. Several staff members rushed into the field to assist their colleagues, but also fell unconscious. Site 11 was put on full code red lockdown, and all staff were commanded to remain at their current locations. Diagnostic tests on Foundation radio equipment estimate that the radius of the field was approximately 76 meters. Post-incident interviews revealed that all affected staff shared a common dream of SCP-3547. The dream consisted of all affected subjects suspended together in a blue-green void, as SCP-3547 delivered a sermon to them by projecting comforting thoughts and an insistence that they spread its message so that it may save humanity and join us in our world. While communing with the subjects, SCP-3547 extended a bundle of fibrous tendrils to each person that wrapped around their heads and extended outwards, forming a web of fibers between them. D-1234 woke up approximately 7 hours after the incident, followed by all other affected personnel. Everyone who had experienced the dream woke up weeping with joy and eager to embrace one another. All subjects were insistent that the Foundation must perform the ceremony described in Dreams of Our Beloved as soon as feasibly possible. Class A amnestics were administered to all affected staff. All affected D-Class personnel were terminated, including D-2374 and 2376. This should be the end of the report, but a footnote has been provided, sending us to a final hidden section of our mystery catalog. 8 short diary entries exist here, marking the month of June in 2018. "I'm so sorry," it begins. "My name is Dr. Rebecca Powell of Site 19. I don't have the authorization to edit this document, but I'll deal with the fallout from that if we get out of this. I was right. I read through the Dreams of Our Beloved during my research into extra-dimensional anomalies, and I recognize what's happening straight away. Someone's done it. I have no idea who, why, or where, but they've done it. I blacked out during the night shift at my desk earlier, and now I'm awake with this stuff stuck to and possibly in my head. I can't really turn too well, but I think it extends out of the door and down the corridor. I called out for help, but either everyone's knocked out or I'm the only one here. I can't get it off my head. If I struggle against it, it just gets tighter. If I try and pull it out, it feels like it burrows in deeper. I think it's best to just leave it alone for now. I can't move, but I can at least type at my terminal." Day 2. The initial shock has subsided, but I've not slept at all. I feel okay though. This is going to sound strange, but I think I can feel what other people are feeling or maybe thinking elsewhere. Like we're connected through this stuff. Now I've calmed down a little, I feel good. Actually, really good despite the circumstances. I think everyone else does too. Still, I'm kind of seizing up a bit and I really need to get up and stretch. I tried sawing through the stuff on my head with my keys, but every time I cut through a piece, it just reattaches. It's organic, I think, cold to the touch, but possibly alive somehow. It has a kind of bluish glow to it that seems to shimmer slightly to match the patterns of my thoughts. I don't feel thirsty or hungry yet, which is odd. Day 3. Still not slept. I can feel it. It's in there somewhere. I think others out there are convinced it's going to save us from something. I don't know what or how. It feels like all of humanity is just waiting. I'm really aching now. I need to get up and stretch my back. I don't feel so good anymore. I've had some time to think about what's happening, and I'm going to request reclassification of SCP-3547 and archive the old containment procedures. They're useless now anyway. I know it's a huge breach of protocol, but if anybody else even reads this again, I'll consider it a win. I'll try and sleep again after I've done that. I'm starting to panic now. Day 4. Still awake. Still waiting. The waiting and not being able to sleep is becoming agonizing. There's nothing I can do but wait. Everyone's waiting. I feel something. I think it's SCP-3547 itself. Himself. I think we betrayed him. I don't know how or why. Still, some remain faithful to their beloved. I close my eyes for hours, and nothing happens. Day 6. Still waiting. Exhausted, but awake. Day 11. Nothing I can do. Just wait and wait and wait. Still awake. All I can feel is despair and the desperation of the faithful. You gave them your word. Do something. Let me sleep. Let us sleep. You're killing us. Day 12. I can't stay like this anymore. Others are disappearing. It's quieter. Every hour. Quieter and quieter. The blue is getting fainter. He's still just watching. Please let me sleep, please, please let me sleep. Day 13. No more. This concludes our evening in the SCP Vault for October of 2019. Thank you for joining me in this excursion, and thank you to the Foundation for lending me, however briefly, this peculiar volume. I'd also like to thank all of my supporters on Patreon who make it possible to live a life outside the Foundation's more, traditional accommodations. Do stick around to see the names of all these awesome creatures of the night at the end of this video. And remember, as little as just $1 a month is more helpful than you ever realize. If you feel like dropping a bit of candy in my bag as thanks for this month's content, a Patreon donation would be the best way to do it. Or of course, you could pick up a bit of merchandise from the Nightmind Teespring shop and wear your affiliation with the dark side of the imagination defiantly in the daylight. Thanks to all of you for viewing, and remember to check out the Nightmind office on Popbase, where I have exclusive content, including some videos that only Patreon supporters have seen. You can hang out with me there to take horror and dark media quizzes, play games, watch Popbase only videos, learn about yours truly, and just have a good autumn evening with your favorite monster cat. It's free, it's on Google Play and the iOS App Store, the links are in the description, and you can even do a bit of trick-or-treating around the whole neighborhood once you're there, visiting other horror channels going all out this October, and some new friends on the block who are getting into the spirit. That's it for tonight, everyone. Thanks for joining me in the dark this evening for our annual SCP Vault special. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and after all the items we've witnessed tonight, especially that last one, I do say with the utmost sincerity, sleep tight.